Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I'm Gary, your host. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. This time, I want to take a look at this book. Here, this is The Crusaders, Volume 1, Operation Bucharest. Now, this is the first full-sized comic book produced by Jack Chick Publishing. And just a couple weeks ago, leading up to Halloween, I had an episode on one of the famous Chick tracts. One of the small mini comics that Chick produced, religious tracts. And this is a religious comic book. And the title, Crusaders, is not to be confused with the Mighty Crusaders superhero team from Archie Comics. And this is the Crusaders in the concept of the historical Crusades from the Middle Ages. And of course, this is, as I said, this is the first one. It was originally published in 1974, and I got this copy about 30 odd years or so ago. And they, over the decades, they've kept reprinting them, keeping it in print, and is undoubtedly still available today. And here, see on the back cover. Shows all of the comic books, at least at that time. I don't know if they've produced any more issues since then. I imagine they probably have. And I've covered, I think, two of them. I said this one and this one. I know I have. That's Primal Man and Spellbound. I've covered before, and there's still a whole bunch of them out there. And so we'll take a little look in here. As I said, the story is written ostensibly, or at least plotted by, because they don't have actual credits in here, other than Jack T. Chick. Written by Jack Chick, or at least plotted by Jack Chick. And just as the small tracts were, that most of the tracts, especially the early tracts, were drawn by Chick himself, who was an able cartoonist. But he later hired a couple of other artists to, or at least one. I've only seen one that I could tell, to work on the full-sized comics, as well as many of the tracts. And from what I understand, then after the death of Jack Chick, they were going back with the other artists and redoing some of his earlier religious tracts. And the artist in this is Fred Carter, who was an outstanding artist. That's what talk about. He did some marvelous stuff. From what I understand, he had been approached by major comic companies like Marvel and or DC, perhaps, to go to work in mainstream comics, and he refused because he has such wonderful artwork. Now, one thing that distinguishes this one from most of the other full-sized Chick comics is that it actually has a complete story. And most of the others, they usually start off with a story, which is like a framing device, which then degenerates into just some preaching aspect, and going into their theology, mostly, and their specific theology, which was often very historically and scientifically inaccurate and downright all pseudo history and pseudoscience. But here, this was in '74, during the time of the of the Soviet Union, and they still get some stuff wrong, or inaccurate. But and so now we'll take a little look. Here it is, Operation Bucharest, because it's all about the Soviet Union, and this story introduces the characters of the Crusaders, who are Tim Clark and Jim Carter. Here it is in the USSR, in the Soviet Union, about someone being having a secret house church, and got the KGB and secret police come crashing in, arresting everyone, and stealing their Bibles. They take the notion that the whole object of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union was to be anti-Christian, when they really didn't. When Christianity was all over in the Soviet Union. Of course, the Soviet Union was officially atheist, even though both Lenin and okay, if you're it's going to fall over, just forget it. Both Lenin and Stalin had been earlier in their lives, I guess, trained for the church, the Russian Orthodox Church, and stuff like that. And not taking into account that the official status of atheism in the Soviet Union was not to be anti-church and anti-Christian. It was to replace the enthusiasm that people had for their churches, their respective religious bodies, to be placed in the Communist Party, their political party. It was a political thing, not a religious thing. So here we go. And so they break in, they say this has nothing to do with the actual story. This is just framing an example. Then they're in thousands of miles away, they're at a church, and there's Dr. Kozlov, and he is with some church people. They are going trying to get Bibles behind the Iron Curtain, and they've got some secret printers set up, hidden away in various locations, but they need a copy of the Bible to print, and so they've got this microfilm of the Bible for them to. And this is what I'm talking about. They introduce the characters who are going to be. It's framed as a very much a spy type operation, and it's very reminiscent in some regards to James Bond's From Russia with Love, except going the other way. So here we introduce the characters. Tim Clark, who was a former Green Beret and Vietnam veteran. And he's only, get this, these guys, Tim is 21. Now, that's possible, but then it was only after he was severely wounded in Vietnam and was aided by a missionary, and became a born again Christian, and then that he left the army and started doing special spy type missions for the church, and then got Jim Carter, who was he's only 20 at this time, and when he was grown up as kind of a gangster, the head of a drug ring, as just a teenager, and when he was being very goonish with an old man in his neighborhood, and then right there with with some very poor apologetics converted. Both of them are. They always have very poor apologetics, and then people are instantly converted. So that's how that works. So now that was the introduction of the Crusaders, and here they are. They're given the mission, shown the microfilm, talk about the printing presses. So they've got to get them, and they're going to have it handed off in Bucharest. So here they are, and they're applying for their passports and visas and stuff like that. And turns out the lady taking the application for the application for the passport. Now I've said before that even though they don't mention it at all in this particular issue, the Jack Chick Society Association, whatever they call it, was very, very anti-Catholic, overtly anti-Catholic, and I presume as much for the Eastern Orthodox Church as well, the Russian Orthodox Church as well, because they're some. They go back as far and etc. But they sometimes have implied, not overt, but implied anti-Semitism, such as this lady here, who has taken the thing. She turns out to be an actual spy for the Russian, for the KGB. Takes the application, realizes that Tim is the nephew of an ambassador to France, and here she takes the application, closes her window, and we know she's Jewish because her name, she has a Jewish name, but she is a caricature of a Jewish lady, and they feature in some of the other stories feature similar characters, but here especially with her. And so she is the spy, sends all the info to her contacts at the Soviet Union. They decide in the KGB, and they decide they're going to set up a honey trap for Tim so that he could so that they can try to blackmail and dishonor the ambassador, his uncle, but that doesn't work. Here they are setting up, trying to set it up. They get a woman while the boys are getting ready to go to Europe, and they're doing it. They're on the way. The KGB head of the KGB. This is when he's describing his plan, and then he recruits a certain girl. Certainly lovely young lady, and here they find out the microfilm is going to be rolled into a cigarette, and it's going to be handed off in a cigarette. So here, they're doing that, and then here's the contact person. So then, meanwhile, they get to Bucharest in Hungary. We find out stuff about the lady, or they're heading there. They have in France, they happen to have a set up a meeting, what appears to be an accidental meeting with the young lady in Paris, when she's trying to when she is supposedly attacked, trying to get at the airport, trying to get a cab, and the object is they're supposed to beat up Jim Carter, to get Tim closer to the girl, but instead Jim, all by himself, beats the crap out of the goons. They save the girl, and turns out they're at the same hotel. They become friends. They're then they head on the train to Bucharest, and they're all together. Then they're there. They're checking out the city and stuff. So Jim is the one who makes she starts making a play for Tim. Well, then Jim is to make the contact and the handover, and of course he's being followed the whole time, and they try to interfere with that, but Jim interferes with the interferers, and they get the handoff, and so now like it's not illegal. It's not shouldn't be that difficult because the Bibles were everywhere, even there. So at the end, then they have the honey trap set up with in the girl's room with a camera for the blackmail, but it doesn't go the way they plan. It's and with extremely lame apologetics, he converts the girl, and she winds up in trouble, and also converts the cameraman who is involved. And the girl, in the end, when it didn't work, she's in a prison in Siberia, but here she is praying and all this stuff. And the mission is a success, and they get the Bibles behind the Iron Curtain, or the microfilm behind the Iron Curtain. So it works. Now, it's a lame story. It's actually about probably the only one, or nearly only one, that actually has a complete story in it. And I enjoy that. I like that. I enjoy reading these books. I try to stay away as much as I can from the actual theology, but it's difficult when you're just describing this stuff. But I look at it primarily as a comic book. It's a comic book. I enjoy reading it. It's a marvelous artwork. That's the biggest plus for these chick comic books, which you don't see quite as often out and about as one used to. But they're still out and about, and it's still available. Here, and it's showed here on the back cover with the others that they've got. And it also has how to get a hold of them. Here's in the U.S. It's got two addresses in Australia, one in South Africa, one in England, and one in Ontario, Canada. So how to get your chick books? Of course, now all you have to do is look it up online, and you can get them. But I don't go in depth into the theology, other than pointing out some of the harder things in there. But I enjoy reading them. I really enjoy reading all of these as well. So I want to thank you for joining me, and let me know what you think of the Crusaders and Operation Bucharest. And thank you for joining. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave your comments down below. What other chick comics have you read then? Let me know. And remember, comics are art.